If you're used to connecting computers together, you might have used something like a network switch, which has a lot of places where different computer cables can be connected. DMX, on the other hand, allows multiple devices to be connected together without needing a lot of plugs on the DMX controller. In these videos, I'm going to set up different lights all being connected to my equipment using this one DMX adapter, Soundswitch adapter. The connections are made using cables like this. If these cables look familiar, well, it's because this one here is an XLR cable, similar to ones that you probably use for connecting speakers. This one here is a DMX cable. On the outside, they pretty much look the same, but the way they're designed inside is different. So XLR cables are designed to carry analog sound. DMX cables are intended to carry digital signals. Now technically you can use XLR cables for DMX and it will work. It's not recommended though, and if you're using cables over longer distances, then you might find that with XLR cables you'll start having signal connection issues that you wouldn't have if you're using proper DMX cables. With DMX, you connect the lights together so that one cable is connected to the first light into the in plug, then another cable goes from the out plug to another light's in plug, and so on. So the lights are connected one to another in a daisy chain sort of configuration. In addition to connecting your lights physically, you also need to let Soundswitch know what lights you have. This is done through DMX addresses that are known as channels. Most DMX compatible lights have several features that can be controlled by DMX, which means they will take up more than one channel. For example, a certain light might have features like color, brightness, or other effects that can be controlled through DMX. The more controllable features a light has, the more DMX channels it will require. DMX uses collections of channels called universes. Each DMX universe consists of 512 channels, and your lights need to be assigned within those channels. I'm going to start with this Chauvet Intimidator moving headlight. I've got two of these, and I can set each one to use the same DMX channel, which means they'll both be doing exactly the same thing. Or I can give each one its own DMX channel, which means that each one can be controlled and moved independently, and that's what I'll be doing. I use these buttons on the back of the fixture along with this little screen to change it to DMX mode. And I have a few options here. I can set it so that it uses either 8 or 14 channels. More channels means that Soundswitch will be able to control more of the features of the light individually, so that's what I'll be doing. I'll also need to set the starting address, and in this case, I'll be setting the starting address to 152. Since it's in 14 channel mode, this light will take up channels 152 through 165 in my lighting setup. I'll set my other Intimidator light to start at channel 166, and it will occupy channels 166 to 179. For each of the lights you plan on using Soundswitch, you'll need to assign channels to it. Make sure they don't overlap channels that would be used by another light. It might be a good idea to write down the channels you intend to use for each light to make sure you don't have any overlaps. Next, I'll need to add this lighting Soundswitch. First, I need to set Soundswitch on my computer, and once it starts, I'll set it to edit mode. If it's the first time I've used Soundswitch, I might need to set it to DJ software that I'll be using it with. I can go to the settings option up here, and for the input, I can choose the type of DJ software that I'll be using with it. In my case, it's set to Engine DJ. If I changed that, I would need to restart Soundswitch before it would take effect. And up above the menus, it shows what DJ software it's currently set to. I might also need to create a new project if I don't want to use the sample project that Soundswitch comes with. So I can go File, New Project, give it a name, and save. Venues are available in these tabs on the top, and this allows you to have configurations set up for different venues without having to create a new Soundswitch profile for each one. That's pretty useful if there are places where you DJ a lot, so you can have different lighting configurations ready to go at each venue. Next I would need to start adding my lights to Soundswitch. I can add lights quickly by clicking this plus button up here, which allows me to choose different types of lighting fixtures, but if you're new to Soundswitch, it might be better doing it from the DMX mapping screen where it's easier to see how the addresses are being used, and that's how I prefer to do it. So I'll open up the DMX configuration options, and here we can see all 512 DMX channels represented with these numbered boxes. In the bottom section I can choose the type of light I have. First, the brand on the left. Since this is a Chauvet light, I can just type the first few letters and that selects the brand. Now I can do the same on the right to select from the list of Chauvet brand lights. So I start in typing Intimidator, and it's Intimidator Spot LED 350, and so there's the one I want, 350, and I can choose either 8 channel mode or 14 channel mode. But since I set the light itself to 14 channel mode, then I need to make sure I choose the same option here. And I also set the light itself to start at channel 152. So now I drag that light up onto the number 152 space. And since the light is set to use 14 channels, you can see that Soundswitch starts this light on channel 152 and it continues all the way to 165 and uses up all those channels to control this light. I'll also add my other Intimidator light the same way, but since the other light is set to start at channel 166, then that's the number square I drag it onto. I can also rename both of them in my channel setup, so I'll rename this first fixture and I'll say that's the one that's on the left, and I'll rename the other one and say that's the one on the right, which makes it a little easier for me to tell which one's which when I'm actually setting up the lights. Now I'm going to add another light. I've got this Chauvet color bar with its 12 lights, and once again I would need to look at the little screen on the back of the light and use the buttons to set it to the DMX mode. This one also has an option to choose how many channels you can assign to it. I'm choosing the biggest option, which lets Soundswitch control 41 channels. It has a lot of channels since there are 12 individual lights on this fixture, and for each light there are options for changing color, intensity level, as well as different patterns for the lights to follow. Now I'm setting this light to start on channel 52. If I was worried about running out of DMX addresses, I could make sure there's no unused channels between each light, and I could use the options on my lights to use less channels. With 512 channels though, I'd have to have a lot of lights before I'd be worried about running out. For each light I can specify what kind of light it is, which Soundswitch uses to decide how to make use of the lights when creating automatic lighting scripts. You can also assign lights to one of 4 groups, which can be handy if you want to do things like adjust the brightness of a group of lights without affecting the other lights. I'll make sure both my movers are set to primary as the type of lighting fixture, and I'll set all of them, or both of them, to group 1 as well. Now I'm going to add that color bar in Soundswitch. I already still have the brand name selected, so on the right I can put in the type of light it is. So it's a color band Pix USB, and I've set it to 41 channels, so I'll make sure that's the option I'm choosing. And I set the starting address as 52, so I place it to that position in my DMX configuration. And there we can see this light is starting from channel 52 and is using all of the channels up to channel 92. So this one's automatically set to a wash light. I'll leave it as that, and I'll assign this particular light to group 2. If I have more lights to add, then I repeat that for each one. Set the DMX address on the light itself and any options for the number of channels it's using. Then add that particular light in Soundswitch so that it's using the same address that I set on the actual light. The built-in light library that comes with Soundswitch includes most of the more common lighting brands, even including many older lights. If you have less common lights, then it might not be included in the library. If that's the case, then you have a couple of options. You could add it yourself using the fixture manager software that is available from the Soundswitch website. That takes a little bit of effort to learn. Another option is to send a request to the Soundswitch team who might be able to add it for you. With either of those options, it's extremely helpful if you have the manual that came with the light, since that will usually include information about the DMX channels for that light and what they're all used for. Now I'm going to connect up these lights and test them. While I'm testing the light, I'm going to be using the USB Soundswitch adapter connected into my computer. And later on, when it's time to actually use the lights, that's when I'll plug it into the back of my Denon Prime controller. If you're using a laptop and a controller, then you're just going to use the same laptop for preparing and using, so you won't need to be switching your adapter over. When it's time to connect up the lights, I would have the USB adapter plugged into my computer, and the other end I can plug into a DMX cable which will go to my first light. The other end of the cable would go to the input plug of my lighting fixture, and then the output plug of the same lighting fixture I could plug in another DMX cable, which then goes on to the next light. I keep on doing that from one light to another until they're all connected. The order I connect them with cables doesn't really matter, so that will probably be decided by the length of the cables and where the lights are positioned. It's the DMX addresses that matter to Soundswitch. Now, just as you can use wireless connections to connect computers together, you can also use wireless DMX, which I'll talk about in another video, but for now, I'm only using cables. Now I'm ready to test the lights. With each light set up in Soundswitch, and with each of the lights connected and turned on, I'll make sure Soundswitch is seeing them. I'll click Done down in the corner there to close my DMX window, and then I'll click on MIDI up the top to go into the MIDI mode. This is pretty similar to what you see in performance mode, and in fact I need to make sure I have performance mode in these tabs along the top. So these color buttons here, if I click on the yellow button, notice that the lights all now light up as yellow. I can press other colors and check, and that's showing me that Soundswitch is talking to my lights. I can press UV to check lights that are capable of UV, white, and even check out strobe effects. So all those sort of things let me know that Soundswitch is now communicating with my lights properly and ready for Soundswitch to tell them what to do. And that leads us on to creating our light shows, which we're going to start to cover in the next video. Now for most lights you could go through the same process, but what if you've got old lights and you want them to work with Soundswitch? Now Soundswitch works with DMX, which has been around for quite a while, so if your lights are DMX compatible, then they should work with Soundswitch. For example, I've got this dynamo light here. These were pretty common about 20 years ago, not just with mobile DJs. I remember DJing in warehouse raves where they had whole arrays of these set up working in sync with lasers and other lights. And if we look on the bottom here, we can see DMX in and DMX out, so we know it is DMX compatible. So to use this with Soundswitch, I should just be able to set a DMX channel on this light, and then the rest will be the same as my other lights, adding light in Soundswitch. But how do I set a DMX channel? Unlike newer lights, this one doesn't have a nice convenient little screen that I can use to set the channels. Instead, on the bottom, like a lot of old lights, it has this row of switches. And if we look closely at this row of switches, we can see that each of them is numbered. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 and so on. Now if you're familiar with binary numbers, then that would be familiar to you, because these switches allow you to set a DMX channel as a binary number. If you're not familiar with binary numbers, it's not as complicated as you might expect. In fact, I often teach 12-year-old high school students how to work with binary numbers. But essentially, if you've learned basic maths, then you would be familiar with decimal numbers, where we have 10 values for each digit, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and one digit representing ones, another digit representing tens, hundreds, thousands, and so on. With binary numbers instead, each digit has two values, 1 and 0, where the first digit is worth 1, then 2, 4, 8, just like what we saw on the labels with these switches. So if I was going to set the DMX channel on this light, I would need to set it as a binary number, which means knowing how to represent that channel in a binary way. Now, if you're not sure how to do that, there are plenty of resources that can help you do it, and there are even resources that can do it for you. In fact, there's a good chance you've got one built into your computer. Now, on my computer, I can open up the Windows calculator, and ever since the very first version of Windows, there has been a calculator application like this. And the functionality of the calculator has changed over time, with new features being added, and at the moment I'm in the standard view where I can just do basic arithmetic calculations, addition, multiplication, and so on. It also has various other modes available from this menu, like a scientific mode where I can find trigonometric functions and other things, and currency converter, converters between different units like centimeters and inches. But the one I'm mostly interested in here at the moment is the programmer mode, which is used for number types that are common in computer applications such as programming. And here I can see common computer number systems represented. We've got hexadecimal, decimal, octal, binary. And if I want to convert a binary number to decimal, then first I need to select decimal, or to go from decimal to binary. Now, if I was going to set this light to channel 150, in decimal numbers I'd write it as 150, just 3 digits, and I wouldn't normally write in any digits in front of that, but if I did, they would all be zeros. And in the decimal space here, I type in that 150, there's my 150, and that automatically shows that the binary equivalent 1001 0110, which I could then set on the switches on the bottom of my light there. You may notice though that on the light it starts off with 1 on the left and then 2 and then 4. Normally the way binary numbers are written is the other way around, just like our normal numbers. So with our decimal numbers, the smallest digits on the right, ones and then tens. And same with binary, so that the smallest one on the end is ones and then twos. So the one on the far right is a 0, which means I would need to set the switch in the 1 position to off. And the next one is 1, which would mean that I would need to set the switch in the 2 position to on, and so on through the rest of those lights. Now, often the manual that comes with the light has a little bit of information about DMX options and what they can do, and I still have the manual for my dynamo just because I'm that kind of person. But to be able to set the DMX channel on that, then I'll go to those switches. Now I've already got another light here already set up, the dynamo's big brother, the dyno twin, and on this one, on the bottom, I've already set those switches to the positions indicated by that binary number 1001 0110, or in this case the switch is being set to on off off on off on off. I've already plugged in the light into the DMX cable, and the other end of the DMX cable is plugged into my Soundswitch adapter, which is plugged into my computer. Now in Soundswitch, I've gone into my DMX settings, I've set the brand name Acme, just like in the old Roadrunner cartoons, the type of light, Dyno Twin, and I've added it to DMX channel 150. All that's left to do now is to plug in the light, and with older lights, when you set them with those switches, generally it's best to set the channel when the light is turned off, because if you set it when the light is turned on, then you've just got to turn it off and on again to make it work anyway. So now I can plug the light in. Now I have the features of this light being connected using Soundswitch.